One of the first things that I remember reading that Lee Hardy ever wrote was a book on vocation. He was writing about how we should think about Christian engagement in terms of where we are in the world and how we interact with our professional as well as personal environments. And Lee's the kind of person that lives that out.
So I was appointed as the chair of the Core Revision Committee in the late 1990s. What we did is we associated the core curriculum with the long tradition of liberal arts education. In exploring that tradition, we realized that liberal arts education was initially and in effect a preparation for civic engagement across the board. And then we connected that idea with the Christian idea of vocation. The core curriculum is connected to the liberal arts tradition to civic engagement to vocation. And I hope that those linkages remain in whatever we come up with in the future.
He has been so much at the center and the heart of what we are and what's kept us going. One of the consistent things that I hear from our graduates when I run into them in various places is how much Lee meant to them in their own personal development.
Sometimes people ask me about the high points of my career, and certain events or days come to mind, but really I think I experience the high points in my career every day. Interacting with my students in the classroom, my colleagues in the hallways, that's just been an undiluted pleasure.
Well, for the first sort of 10 years that she was at Calvin, she was the only woman faculty member in the Department of Religion. She was living proof that the study of religion was gender inclusive.
It was really important that students, both male and female students, see a woman in front of the classroom, right, teaching, kind of passionate about what she was doing. So for some men, that was a first experience to see a woman talking about theology and Bible in an academic setting, and for women as well.
One of the great things about teaching the Bible is that you can always appeal to what the text actually says, which will challenge our presuppositions about what we think it ought to say. And I think that would be indicative of Chris's approach to teaching those subjects.
Part of what happens when you learn is that you grow typically from being a black and white thinker to being able to handle ambiguity and complexity. And so kind of what they're doing when they're wrestling with these texts is in effect becoming more sophisticated thinkers.
You know, if you take Calvin's mission as transforming parts of culture, renewal of all things, renewal in the prison is happening in that Hanlon program.
So what they want to learn from us, and I think and what we're in a unique position to give them, is a sense of God's calling. I mean, they grab hold of this notion that they are prime citizens of the kingdom, because they're not prime citizens in the state of Michigan or in this country at all. Right? But there we can tell them, right, that they too are created in God's image, and that there's a meaning to their life. And that for some of them, that life is going to be lived out in the prison. And that they can look on this as a place where they can, in a sense, shine light.
I think one of the things that Ralph brought to Calvin that we hadn't had before is a professional paleontologist. It's such an important phase of the whole theory of evolution, which is a major theory of science and needs to get out to college students. They need to know what evolution is and what the evidences are for it, and a great portion of that comes from the field of paleontology. But Ralph is a multi-talented fellow. He's really an excellent teacher, and the students love him. He's got unbounded energy, I think. He's one of those persons that you wish never retired because he brings so much to the institution and to the geology program at Calvin.
Ed has been a tremendous presence on Calvin's campus and in the department. He is welcoming to everyone. It doesn't matter your background or your history. He welcomes you.
Foreign language teacher, world language teachers have this opportunity to help lead our students to understanding better the other person, the other. We can't look at world languages as just grammar and repetition of certain structures, but an introduction to culture, introduction to others who are different than us, and I think that's valuable.
He directed the program in Honduras, he directed the program in Spain, did the program in Mérida, and that's difficult work. You're working 24 hours, and more importantly, you're leaving your friends and family and support networks, and in his case, he was leaving wife and children at home. But Ed has done that then many times for the department, for our students.
That they're going to learn something that they're not going to learn necessarily in a book, and they might learn something in a different way than they would learn it in their classes here on campus. So part of why I enjoy teaching languages, it's an opportunity to see other people and understand other people and understand myself.
Marcy has been very instrumental, not just in our department, but college-wide. She's served most recently as the chair of the Teacher Education Committee. She has also done lots of work in Lansing with the Department of Education.
When you look at American culture, it's pretty obvious that we live in quite a monolingual culture. And so students come into world language classes oftentimes thinking, I can't do this. It's impossible. I can't do language. And so it's exciting to be part of the world languages departments and to be working to inspire students and to help them to see what doors can open to them by knowing a different language. That just expressing something can warm a heart. To say something in another language, even if it's not deep or profound, but you can connect with somebody differently when you attempt to speak in their language than you can if you just stay in your own.
She led us through some difficult situations. She would never say that she is a leader, but I think she really was a good leader because she's empathetic and fair, and those qualities are really important and really difficult.
One of the richest parts of my time here at Calvin certainly has been working with wonderful colleagues, and that is both in the Spanish department and the other world languages departments, and also the education unit, which is broad across the whole college. All of those colleagues, I think, have served to inspire and challenge me through my years at Calvin.
When I was in college, there were 3 professors that really had an impact on my life and my career. And I always felt that someday I wanted the opportunity to pay that forward. So in 1967, I taught dynamics on the Franklin campus. That was my first chance to pay it back.
Engineers need to be prepared technically, but they also need to be prepared for the workplace. And Ned's been focused on that.
But when I came to Calvin, my first year teaching here, a couple students came to my door and said, "Can you help us get a job?" I said, "Sure, why not?" And a couple weeks later, they both had jobs. And then lo and behold, I had 20 students at my door. And thus started an internship program that I ran for 24 years. I realized that in the engineering department, there were not many opportunities for students to do something, to travel, and so I started an interim course
called Business and Engineering for the International Market. And I did that for 18 years and took about 800 students to Europe.
For many of our students, this is the first time that they have a passport. And when they use that passport to do the interim, they can work towards an international designation on the engineering degree. And that essentially tells employers that I have a passport and I'm not afraid to use it.
I'm always reminded of the fact that every single student has a set of parents who have their dreams and hopes on that child, and they're hoping that Calvin College is going to take their child and make something out of them, help them have a career and a life, and it's exciting to be part of that.
Wayne's a chemical engineer, really had no acquaintance with Calvin before his daughter came as a student, and was pleased that they had engineering, but not pleased that they didn't have chemical engineering. And so he started developing a program for chemical engineering at Calvin when he was still working in industry back in Pennsylvania.
So the way I opened the door is made some cold turkey calls. I was coming here for my daughter's wedding. I called the president, the provost, and the dean and said, "Can I get 10 minutes?" 2 out of 3 gave me 10 minutes. The rest is history. I came to Calvin after a 30-year career in industrial R&D. And I expected to be here 5 or 6 years, starting a new program, chemical engineering, and then take normal retirement. Well, a key thing changed. The students were incredible, and it was just so rewarding to work with these young people that 5 to 6 became 21.
So I think the thing that characterizes him as a teacher, as a professor, not just a teacher, but as a professor, is the way that he cares about students. And so we have a program, and yet he is interested not in aggregate numbers, but as the students and individuals and what is best for them, and is not afraid to tear everything up and start all over and advocate for this is what is best for this individual student.
Susan has been the coordinator of the early childhood program. She's been the advocate. A big part of Susan's scholarship has been making sure that people respect the young child and respect the profession of teaching the young child.
Susan is early childhood, and she loves students. She loves kids. Anytime you walk past an early childhood classroom, there are lots of good things happening.
When Susan became part of our faculty, our classrooms gradually transformed. And she would walk into a classroom and look at it from the perspective of, if there was a young child in here, how would they see it?
At the end of a meeting or at the beginning of a meeting, she might say, "Do we have time for a story?"
That story would be about a young child or about one of her student teachers or someone. And it reminded us that our agendas are nothing without the practice. Susan, we have learned so much from you about being true to living out our commitments, to being culturally competent and having humility about the work. And I hope that we continue in that same vein that you've modeled so well.
Jo's passion, interests lie in early literacy. The work that she does in Sierra Leone is teacher education, teacher training of hundreds, thousands of teachers. Jo's basically the lead person for teacher education for the entire country of Sierra Leone.
There are 2 schools in Sierra Leone. that are named Johanna Kuyvenhoven schools, that people thought, we need to name a school after her. She often says about herself, I have no idea how this happened to me. How I went from just being this sort of high school teacher, sort of minding my own business, to now being asked by United Nations and World Bank and the Canadian organizations that's now sponsoring her to do this work, to spearhead this work. She said, I have no idea how this happened to me. I think I know why it happened to her, because she's an expert. She's got talent that's very unusual.
She's such a good person, first and foremost. She embodies what it means to be a Christian in my, if you want to call it, narrow view of what it means a Christian, to show Christ-like love